All right, finally, how about we go ahead and wrap on a little bit of a positive note here? Because, listen, it feels like there's been a little too much negativity on this show. We complained about the college football playoff games that, frankly, weren't very good. We obviously spent a lot of time talking about Matt Corral. Was it right? Was it wrong? Who's allowed to decide what Matt Corral should do? So let's end on a positive. It's a new year, new me, new you, 2022. So let's talk Rose Bowl. Because you talk about a way to start off the year in style. How about this? Ohio State 48, Utah 45, instant classic, one of the best college football games that has ever been played, okay? And yes, I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think it's an opinion. I think it's a fact. It was one of the single best college football games I've ever seen. Yes, I know defense was optional, but part of it was just dudes making plays, right? First of all, Ohio State, almost 700 yards of total offense. C.J. Stroud, 573 yards passing. And if you did not know the name Jackson Smith-Njigba before, my, oh my, do you know that name now? Jackson Smith-Njigba. This guy burst onto the scene, I thought, in the Nebraska game. If you guys listen to this podcast, you know I watch way too much Nebraska football. But this kid was unbelievable in the Nebraska game, 240 yards receiving. And it was like, how does this guy keep getting so wide open? Well, as it turns out, it wasn't just Nebraska. Scott Frost, don't blame him. Don't blame Nebraska. Jackson Smith-Njigba against a very good Utah team, and credit Utah on an incredible season. How about this? 347 yards receiving. It was insane, right? I was preparing for my Fox Sports Radio show on Saturday night, and it's crazy. I'm putting together my stats, and I'm putting together my notes, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I write down Jackson Smith-Njigba, 247 yards receiving, and I'm like, oh my God, what a game that he had. And then I checked a little closer. My eyes are going bad, and it was 347 yards. Sets an FBS bowl game record. Breaks Terry Glenn's Ohio State receiving record. He did it by the end of the third quarter. Breaks the Rose Bowl record set by Keyshawn Johnson. So when you're breaking records set by Terry Glenn, a former first-round pick, and Keyshawn Johnson, the number one overall pick in the draft in 1996, you know you're doing something right. Have a day, Jackson Smith-Njigba. And what was kind of crazy about this game was that this was kind of the game where, in theory, you'd think that a kid like this would be slowed down. I just talked about it a minute ago with Matt Corral. Ohio State had not one, but two first-round receivers opt out of this game. Garrett Wilson opted out of this game. Chris Olave opted out of this game. Both of those guys are going to be first-round picks when the NFL draft is held in April in Vegas. Jackson Smith-Njigba instead sets a receiving record, and I got to say, he kind of reminds me of Cooper Kupp. It was funny. I was watching the NFL on Sunday. Shout out Antonio Brown, who retired mid-game. I'm not talking about Antonio Brown, but, you know, it's funny because I was watching the Rams game, and I saw my buddy Colin Cowherd tweet this, but he said Cooper Kupp is not only the best wide receiver in the NFL, but it seems like he's always open. And it's like that is the gift of being a great route runner, a great wide receiver, understanding the offense, is the ability to get open when you should never be open because you're clearly the best player. And that's exactly what Jackson Smith-Njigba did time after time after time, play after play after play, series after series after series. Incredible game, incredible win, incredible effort from both teams. And that's really how I want to wrap. Because for the last month, you've seen people in the media. You've heard people talk about the idea again. We talked about opt-outs last segment with Matt Corral, and we talked about quote-unquote meaningless bowl games, okay? Well, if you think bowl games are meaningless, I hope you did not watch the Rose Bowl, because that could not be the furthest thing from the truth. And I'll be honest, I don't really even I think that the Rose Bowl proved once and for all that there will never be such a thing as a meaningless bowl game as long as bowl games are played. And it's not to say, and this is another conversation for another day, and maybe we talk about it at some point in the offseason, it's not to say that I'm not in favor of expanding the playoff, but at the same time, even if we expand the playoff, we are still going to have these middle to bottom tier bowl games. Maybe the Rose Bowl will never not be part of the playoff. I don't know. But if you think the Boca Raton Bowl is going anywhere, you think the Cheez-It Bowl is going anywhere, you think the Pinstripe Bowl is going anywhere, you are sadly mistaken. They make too much money for ESPN and the networks. People watch them. They're great for there's a reason that all of these games are on, and it's because everybody watches them. There's nothing to do. It fills a ton of programming during a week where there's not much else going on. And so these bowl games aren't going anywhere. But to me, this game proved beyond a reasonable doubt that anytime two teams get on the field, there is something to be played for. Not an exhibition, not a preseason, not resting your starters. But in a game that matters, in a game where there is a winner and loser, there is never going to be such a thing as meaningless bowl games. And so it's so funny to me, right? Because, first of all, I love the idea, like, when I hear all these stories about meaningless bowl game this and meaningless bowl game that, it cracks me up because this is a conversation, like, the idea of being motivated or not motivated for a bowl game, that has basically been going on as long as there have been actual bowl games, okay? I've been watching college football for close to 30 years now. Conversations about who's excited to be there and who is not, those have been going on forever. I was watching college football, forget the playoff. I was watching college football before the BCS. And even at that time, people talked about, well, this team thought they were going to the Rose Bowl and they ended up in this bowl. This team thought they were going to play this team for a national. This team lost to their rival. The conversation about wanting to be in certain bowl games has been going on forever. But what I believe that Saturday proved was once you get competitive athletes on a field together, competing, lining up against each other, you are going to get the best out of them, especially on a stage like the Rose Bowl, especially in a game that is so big, and especially a game that has real meaning, real impact, even if it doesn't, quote-unquote, isn't part of the playoff. I mean, think about Ohio State. You're coming off that loss to Michigan. You got embarrassed against your rival. You lost for the first time to your rival in a decade. You think that Ohio State didn't want to put their best foot forward on Saturday? You think that they were coming there to do nothing, to get a free trip to Pasadena, take a trip to Disney World and get out? No! They came to win. Utah goes without saying. We know it was at stake for them. First Pac-12 title. You knew they were going to be ready to go. But part of this, too, that I don't think enough people realize is, yes, there are always going forward going to be people that opt out. But at the same time, what I would also say is this. What I think gets underappreciated about these bowl games is this. Is that, yeah, there's going to be people that opt out. But you know what it also means? It also means next man up. And that was what stood out to me about Ohio State on Saturday, okay? Everyone's talking about, the opt-out's this and this and this. You know what I saw? I saw 3-4 guys that decided, you know what? I have to protect my future. It's in my best interest not to be a part of this game. I saw a bunch of guys that were super excited to be part of this game, knowing that it was their first chance to have a real opportunity to show their fan base, show their coaches what they're capable of. Not sure if you paid attention. There was a kid. His name's Marvin Harrison Jr. You may know his dad, Marvin Harrison. He was awesome forever with the Indianapolis Colts and Peyton Manning. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a 5-star freshman at Ohio State this year. Marvin Harrison Jr. played behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 5 total catches this entire season. He had 6 in the Rose Bowl, 3 for touchdowns. You think that guy's not excited to be on the field? You think that guy is not excited to be playing in the Rose Bowl? You think that guy's not excited that his first big game, the first meaningful snaps that he's taking at Ohio State are in front of 100,000 people in Pasadena and he's balling the heck out? Same with Emeka Ibuka, the number 1 wide receiver in the country last year. Same with Julian Fleming, a 5-star from a previous year who hasn't had his opportunity. You think those guys aren't excited? And so the idea, like this is what bothers me about the idea of meaning. There's always somebody that it's their first chance, it's their first opportunity, and they're excited to be there, and that's awesome, and that's great. Finally, what I would say, and I think this is something that gets completely lost, look, we're going to have these opt-outs. It's part of the deal going forward. There's nothing we can do, but I bring it up because in a lot of ways, I think all these bowl games are going to turn into is exactly what I just said, is a stage, is an opportunity for other guys who have not played and really start to build towards the next season, okay? Because I was thinking about this after the Ohio State game. I think you can argue that Ohio State fans are more excited right now coming off of that bowl game than they would have been if all of their players had opted in and they had played in that bowl game. And let me explain why. Yes, the defense struggled. Yes, the defense is going to be a talking point on sports talk radio in Columbus going forward all offseason long. But at the same time, what I would also say about Ohio State is this, is that if they had everybody play, if Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and everybody had played in this game, yeah, it would have been a fun kind of going out party, and it would have been cool, and maybe we win and we have a good time. But now think about how much more excited Ohio State fans are going into next year because of the guys that did opt out. One, you got to see a pissed-off C.J. Stroud. I guess C.J. Stroud thought he should have won the Heisman Trophy. I heard on the radio call, I was driving into work, I heard on the radio call they were talking about this. I did not realize that C.J. Stroud thought he should win the Heisman Trophy. But independent of that, you got a pissed-off C.J. Stroud. You got to see him with the young guys, and you got to see what next year's team is going to look like. So instead of having that sour taste in your mouth after the Michigan game, you now got to see what that 2022 Buckeyes roster is going to look like. And so, yes, they need work, and yes, the defense, whatever. It was a great game. It was an awesome game. And I think this is the future of non-playoff bowl games where you get a chance to see the young guys, you get a chance to build some momentum, and you get a chance to build real excitement going into next season. But mostly just credit Ohio State, credit Utah for putting on an incredible performance.